Good evening students, welcome you all to yet another session on the NPTEL certified course on the topic an overview on maternal health, the antenatal, intranatal and postnatal care. Myself Dr. Barnali Ghosh, an obstetrician and gynecologist working as assistant professor at BC Roy Medical College and Research Center, IIT Kharagpur. We have already dealt in the previous classes the female external genitalia, that is the vulva or the pudendum. Today our topic of discussion is the female internal genitalia, that is the anatomy of cervix and the uterus. Concepts to be covered on today's class are the anatomy of cervix, the transformation zone, the colposcopic view and a little bit regarding cervical incompetency. Key words for today's class are as follows: female internal genitalia, cervix, transformation zone, colposcopy. Coming to the class proper. Here this is a pictorial representation of the female internal genitalia. We can see this is the uterus. This is the uterus and this part is the cervix. Uterus going down forming the cervix and the appendages of uterus, which is the fallopian tube on both sides. These are the two ovaries on both sides and the ovary is being attached to the uterus by the ovarian ligament. Below the cervix is the vagina, right? So, to be precise, today's discussion will mainly revolve around this cervix. Cervix starts from the internal os and it ends at the external os. Coming to the anatomy of cervix. We all know that the cervix is the lower part of the uterus, and we have discussed in the previous class that vagina is attached to the cervix at its middle, right. So, this cervix is divided by the attachment of vagina on its sides into two parts. The part above the attachment of vagina is called the supravaginal cervix, and the part which is below the attachment, this part, this is called as infravaginal cervix, or another name for this is portiovaginalis. Right. Coming to the length of the cervix. Length of the cervix, this is the internal os, this is the external os. This length of the cervix varies. It can be said that it comes as a range and it ranges between 2.5 to 4 centimeters. Another point here is this is the anterior vaginal wall, posterior vaginal wall, and we can see that the posterior vaginal wall is longer, right. These are the fornices, anterior fornix, posterior fornix, and on the sides are the two lateral fornices. Cervix is mainly composed of fibrous tissue 10 to 15% is made up of smooth muscle cells. Another important point regarding the cervical fluid pH is it is alkaline. In the previous class, we discussed that the vaginal pH is acidic, approximately 4.5 during the reproductive age group females. But cervical pH is alkaline. It remains around 7 to 7.4. So, cervical pH is alkaline, vaginal pH is acidic. You need to remember this in the subsequent slides. Now coming to the external os and the internal os. So, we have discussed that internal os lies above and external os lies below. Shape of the external os in nulliparous. Nulliparous means women who did not have any vaginal delivery. They can have delivery by caesarean section, but they had not undergone any vaginal delivery. In those women, the external os is pinhole in shape. Whereas, in women who did have vaginal delivery, one or more, there due to cervical tear or injury during the process of childbirth, these in the long run they get healed, and these healed cervical tears will lead to the shape of the external os becoming a transverse slit. So, in nulliparous women who did not have vaginal birth, the external os is pinhole, whereas in multiparous it is a transverse slit. This is a speculum examination which shows in nulliparous woman it is pinhole external os, whereas in multiparous woman we can see the external os as a transverse slit. Now coming to the shape of the cervical canal. The external os is pinhole. The internal os which is above is always closed. Always in the sense normally it is closed. If it is open, then this will result in cervical incompetency. So, in normal conditions the internal os is closed and this is the external os which is pinhole in nulliparous. So, the cervical canal is cylindrical, whereas in multiparous the internal os remains above, but the external os is transverse slit, thereby making the cervical canal conical in shape. Here we will discuss about the cytology study of cervix, which is also known as the pap smear. This pap smear is taken by this Ayer spatula, right? This is the Ayer spatula and it has two ends. These two ends have two different uses. This end is blunt, right? It has one end is slightly longer and this is used for multiparous. This is used for multiparous. That means this longer end will go inside the external os and the shallow end will remain in the outside the external os. And now we will rotate 360 degree all around the external os to get scrapings both from the endocervix as well as the exocervix. Whereas this end is used in case of nulliparous, where the external os is pinhole. That means it looks like this. This is pinhole. Here we will use this end which goes inside this end, this goes inside the internal os and this end remains outside the internal os, right. So, now again we rotate 360 degree and we get scrapings both from the endocervix as well as the exocervix, and then we place it over a slide and see it under microscope after fixing it with ethyl alcohol. So, this is also known as pap smear and it is a cytologic study of the exocervix as well as the endocervix. It is used as a screening test for cancer cervix. So, these two ends have been designed depending upon the difference in shape of the external os in multiparous and nulliparous woman. Now, coming to the ectocervix and the endocervix. We have already told that the ectocervix is the part of the cervix which is exposed to the vagina. So, this part is the ectocervix and this part is the endocervix. Coming to the lining epithelium. Lining epithelium of the exocervix is that of the vagina. The lining epithelium of the exocervix is that of the vagina. We have already studied in the previous class that the vaginal epithelium is stratified squamous epithelium and also it is non-keratinized. And does it have glands? No, there are no glands. So, same for ectocervix. Another thing which we have discussed is this vaginal epithelium. This is same as that of the ectocervix. So, this has three types of cells, which number 1 are the superficial cells, number 2 are the basal intermediate cells, and number 3 are the basal cells. And these cells have different structures, superficial cells being spherical, basal cells being round with large nuclei, intermediate cells are neither spherical nor round. It is somewhat intermediate between superficial and basal, and they have a nucleus at the periphery which is boat shaped or vesicular in shape, and depending upon the predominance of estrogen, there is increased estrogen means more superficial cells, increased progesterone means more intermediate cells, and absence of estrogen or progesterone means presence of basal cells. This holds true also for the ectocervix. Coming to the endocervix. In the endocervix, I will use a different color. This is the endocervix. Endocervix is lined by columnar cells. This is called as tall or high columnar cells. Does it have cilia? No, there is no cilia. Does it have glands? Yes, it does have glands. Glands are present. Thus, endocervix has glands and there are glandular secretions. It has glands, there are glandular secretions, and the pH of cervical fluid is alkaline. Another important thing is the squamous. This is the squamous cells and below which lines the ectocervix, and above is the columnar cells which lines the endocervix. So, this point is the junction of columnar cells above and squamous cells below. So, this is called as the squamo-columnar junction. This squamo-columnar junction is the original squamo-columnar junction which is present before puberty. With changes in hormonal levels, with changes in hormones within the female body, there is shift of this squamo-columnar junction above or below. What happens? During puberty, at puberty, after the female attains puberty, there is secretions from the ovarian follicles, and these ovarian follicles will secrete estrogen and progesterone. So, the vaginal fluid, what happens? Green is the squamous epithelium, ectocervix, and red is the columnar epithelium, right. Now, at puberty there is predominance of estrogen. So, the superficial epithelial cells, these are the superficial epithelial cells which will become predominant because there is more estrogen being produced from the ovarian follicles, from the developing ovarian follicles, and these superficial cells, they have abundant cytoplasm which contains glycogen. This glycogen will be acted upon by lactobacillus to form lactic acid, which will convert the vaginal pH into acidic. pH becomes 4.5 acidic. So, number 1, establishment of acidic pH of vagina. Number 2, another thing that happens is there is slight eversion of this ectocervix. So, there is slight eversion. Of this ectocervix, and this eversion of the ectocervix leads to the exposure of the columnar cells of the endocervical canal to the acidic pH of vagina. These columnar cells, when gets exposed to the acidic pH of vagina, they undergo metaplasia. So, the vaginal cells, the vaginal pH becomes acidic, the ectocervix gets everted, and the vaginal fluid comes in contact with the endocervical cells which are columnar. The endocervical cells in acidic pH, they undergo metaplasia and they form squamous cells. So, the columnar cells are getting converted to squamous cells by a phenomenon known as metaplasia. This is normal and this continues for decades till the vaginal pH is acidic. That means up to menopause. It continues from 15 years of age till 45 years of age, and this is normal. What happens? The columnar cells which are exposed to the acidic vaginal pH, they undergo metaplasia and they now form squamous cells. So, this part which I have drawn in green, these are the new metaplastic squamous cells. These are mature squamous cells which are replacing the original columnar cells. Now, the squamo-columnar junction changes and it comes here. This is the new squamo-columnar junction. Previously this was the squamocolumnar junction, which is known as the old squamocolumnar junction or the original squamocolumnar junction. This area between the new squamocolumnar junction and the original squamocolumnar junction, this area is known as the transformation zone, right. So, I repeat that the squamocolumnar junction originally was outside below, but after puberty, with the onset of puberty, the vaginal pH getting converted to acidic, the columnar cells of the endocervix, they undergo metaplasia and they get converted to squamous cells. So, the squamocolumnar junction shifts, it goes upwards, it goes inside and it forms the new squamocolumnar junction, and this portion which is in between the old squamocolumnar junction and new squamocolumnar junction, this portion is called as the transformation zone. What is the transformation zone? It is nothing but the squamous cells which have been produced by metaplasia from the original columnar cells. This area is very sensitive. These cells are continuously undergoing metaplasia, it is very sensitive and it is likely to get damaged by various insult, like any change in the environment, any change in the organism, it can get converted. So, what happens? Now, so we will come to know that most commonly it gets infected by human papillomavirus and it infects these cells of the transformation zone and thereby it results in cervical cancer. So, these are the gradual changes at birth. The squamocolumnar junction we have shown, it is in the original squamocolumnar junction. The ectocervix is lined by the squamous epithelium and the endocervix is lined by the columnar epithelium, and this remains the squamocolumnar junction. At the onset of puberty in young adult, the vaginal pH becomes acidic and it gets exposed. The ectocervix gets everted, it is slightly everted, and so the columnar cells of the endocervix, they get exposed to the acidic vaginal pH and thereby they undergo, this was the original squamocolumnar junction, but the columnar cells here have undergone metaplasia and they are now covered by squamous cells. So, this zone is known as the transformation zone. This is the transformation zone. Here the original squamocolumnar junction, this is the new squamocolumnar junction. This is a picture in case of perimenopausal woman. In postmenopausal woman, this transformation zone is drawn inside the canal, drawn inside the endocervical canal. It goes up and it is not visible from outside. This is in case of postmenopausal woman. I have already talked about, this is more prone, this transformation zone, the metaplasia undergoing in this transformation zone, it is very sensitive zone and prone to insult by carcinogens, mainly by human papillomavirus, which is mostly the cause of cervical cancer. This is a pictorial diagram where we can see this is the endocervix, this inner lining, this is the endocervix, right. Now, this red part is the ectropion. This is actually the endocervix that has been everted. So, this is columnar cells, right. Now, this is the squamocolumnar junction. This is the new squamocolumnar junction, and outside this is the old squamocolumnar junction, and in between this pink area, this is the transformation zone. This is the picture or a pictorial representation of a colposcopic view of the cervix. we have pictures here. This is a normal cervix, this is the inside, this is the new squamocolumnar junction, this is the external os, this is the endocervix or the columnar cells, this is the new squamocolumnar junction, and this pink line here outside, this is your old squamocolumnar junction. So, in between this area is the transformation zone. Any lesion, any suspicious lesion in this transformation zone has to be evaluated, has to be biopsied, because we know that the cells of the transformation zone are more prone to insult, are more prone to develop cancer, right. Here there are different types of transformation zone. Type 1, where the whole of the transformation zone can be seen outside. This is the picture. Here when we see through the colposcopy, the transformation zone, whole of the 360 degree of the transformation zone is outside, and so we can see the transformation zone fully. It is fully ectocervical. Type 2. Type 2 means a part of the transformation zone. Here this is the new squamocolumnar, the yellow line is the new squamocolumnar junction, and it has gone inside the endocervix. So, a part of the transformation zone cannot be visualized fully. It can be visualized only with application of endocervical speculum. That kind of transformation zone is known as type 2 transformation zone, and in type 3 transformation zone, the new squamocolumnar junction has gone inside. We cannot see it from outside. That yellow line, it cannot be appreciated here, it has gone inside the endocervical canal. It is mostly seen in postmenopausal women, and this is type 3, where we say that colposcopy is not satisfactory. It is unsatisfactory as we cannot visualize the transformation zone fully. This is type 1, where we can appreciate the transformation zone fully outside the external os. It is fully ectocervical. We can see the transformation zone, it is normal. In type 2, a part has gone inside. This is the new squamocolumnar junction. The red part is the columnar cells, outside are the squamous cells. So, this is the new squamocolumnar junction. With endocervical speculum, we can see the type 2 transformation zone. Type 3 in postmenopausal cervix, it is atrophic and it has drawn inside, it has gone within the endocervical canal. We cannot see the whole of the transformation zone. This is type 3, where the colposcopy is unsatisfactory and it has some petechial spots. These are normal, these are not abnormal, right. And this is cervical ectropion, nothing but the endocervix has come outside. This is also normal. These are the different types of transformation zone. Now, coming to the cervical incompetency, it is important clinically, and so I wanted to discuss what happens. That cervix, I have told, it is cylindrical. That cervix, we have already discussed, cervix is cylindrical. That means it is T-shaped. Normally, it is T-shaped. This is normal. When there is incompetency of the internal os always needs to be closed. But if the internal os is incompetent in pregnancy, mostly in second trimester, when the uterus is enlarging, it is gaining in weight and the cervix cannot hold the uterus. So, the cervix opens up and then it becomes Y-shaped. It becomes Y-shaped, the internal os partly it opens. If it opens more, then it becomes V-shaped, and ultimately it gets converted to U-shaped, where the internal os has opened and there is bulging of the bag of membranes. This cervical incompetency will lead to second trimester pregnancy loss. These structures are pictures of your USG pictures, where we can appreciate the cervical incompetency, and we can make a diagnosis of incompetent cervix, thereby more chance of second trimester pregnancy loss. So, this is all about the anatomy of the cervix. Next, we will be discussing about the anatomy of the uterus. The references are Desidatta, Gray's Anatomy, Novak's Gynecology and Williams Gynecology. So, thank you. Next, we will continue with the uterine anatomy.